Hey, what's up, everyone? It's your boy Sur5Ill. Probably a different sort of voice that you're hearing. Welcome to the Moonlighters Club, where we interview aspiring entrepreneurs who are paying their bills by day, pursuing their passions by night, and learning about those folks who are going to be the next crop of CEOs and who are pushing the envelope in entrepreneurship. So with that said, I want to introduce someone who I just met moments ago. I'm going to keep it 100. I have not met this man before. So everything that, it's going to be a really genuine interview where we're learning a lot about each other. He is the co-founder of Drink NOCA, Galen Hand. What's going on, Galen?
Hey man, great to be on here. Thanks for having me. And although we met moments ago, I'm sure this conversation is going to be fluid, dynamic, and full of lots of laughs and hopefully some good info for your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So Galen, I mentioned off mic, I'm a performer, I'm a rapper, in and around the Boston area. I produce events, one most notably called Summerfest, and I think there could be like some good synergy, upcoming. I feel it in my bones, as far as how this interview is going to play out. But where are you and where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm actually from New England. I was born and raised in Portland, Maine, and I went to college in New Hampshire, but I'm based in South Boston now. And yeah, no, honestly, man, we love doing stuff with performers. We love any sort of, activation where we can, get a group of people together, have them try our product, have a good time. Like that's what we're all about.
I love Portland. It's a lot of good food there. Yeah. A lot of great drink.
Good food, good beer.
It's a really good time. Haven't been there in a while, but I hope to get back there soon. You said you went to college in New Hampshire. Where was that?
Yeah, so Portland's a blast for those of you who haven't been there. A lot of good food, great beer. It's gorgeous. It's called Vacation Land for a reason, so definitely recommend going. Summer is a lot better than winter.
Love the beer there.
So I went to college at UNH, University of New Hampshire. That's where I met my two of my best friends who are now my business partners, which I'm sure we'll get into, but studied business there and then went off to the workforce shortly after.
And what were you doing in the workforce? Like, were you working with those guys?
No. So, I guess I took a little bit of a semi non-traditional path to become an entrepreneur, but I was actually an investment banker. I had interned in New York City the summer before my junior year. I'd interned in New York City at a credit fund. So we invested in loans and stuff like that. And after that, I got a job as an investment banker out in Chicago, favorite city in the country. Again, great spot to be, and worked there for about 2 years. Really good experience, learned a ton. But one thing that was really cool for me was that a lot of the businesses we worked with that were our clients out there were founder owned. So, these were companies that had been built to, really substantial points in revenue and the size, the amount of employees, the scale of their businesses was pretty impressive. And, it was very inspiring to see, a guy or a gal who had grown their company from nothing to a very large enterprise. And so to me, that was kind of a fork in the road where I was like, all right, I can either continue on this finance path or I can say sayonara and go to the other side of the fence, which is being an entrepreneur. And, I was talking to Joel, I know that traditionally the guests you guys have on here are folks who are, one, have a full-time job and are doing something on the side, but I guess I'm a little different in the sense that I had a full-time job and then I just completely jumped in the deep end, quit that completely. I didn't have an idea yet, didn't have a company I was going to start, but I quit because I knew that I knew that me and my two friends were going to come up with something.
No. And that's I think that's a misnomer in terms of, being a moonlighter. We welcome, all sorts of stories and what we really want to highlight is like that passion and that pursuit for entrepreneurship. And, we're definitely seeing that here, but that's really interesting. When you quit, how long was it until you found that, that idea that you wanted to pursue?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I quit in July, end of July of 2018. I took 10 days because I hadn't had a vacation in like 2 years. And so I took 10 days and just visited some family. So I started working on ideas, call it middle to end of August of 2018. I had a couple ideas within, I would say, the first couple weeks. And I had the idea for NOCA within the first month. So, let me know what you want to get into, but that's actually something that I haven't really talked about ever, which is like how I approached the idea generation and due diligence side of things, because I think that that's obviously, kind of the nitty gritty of how you come to like.
No, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get into nuts and bolts. Like what is the genesis of NOCA, and how did it come about?
Yeah. So I guess I'll explain what NOCA is first. So we made NOCA. It's we call it a bubble-free boozy water. So it's essentially, a lot of people, a lot of people compare it to almost like a hard seltzer or like a ready-to-drink cocktail, but just without the bubbles. So, it's low calorie, low sugar, gluten-free, tastes unbelievably delicious. Comes in the sleek cans and mix packs. It's everything people want in like a light, refreshing alcoholic drink, but there's no carbonation. That was something that I think the alcoholic beverage industry was massively missing, was a non-carbonated alternative to all the ready-to-drink cocktails out there.
And why no carbon?
And so great question. And that's kind of the one of the thesis points to this product. And so I'll tell you what, I'll answer that question in a roundabout way through kind of explaining the process, if that works. Cool. So the way I went about this, like, listen, there's everybody comes to their ideas in different ways. Everybody does their diligence on ideas in different ways. So, I'll talk about how I did it, but there's a million ways to skin a cat. So what I did, and this is probably going to sound a little psychotic to some people, was I worked essentially all day, almost every day, just doing, I broke down my weeks into idea generation and due diligence. So I essentially set aside 8 to 12 weeks, and from around 8 a.m. until, call it 10 p.m. to midnight, I was just working at a desk, just either doing idea generation on new ideas or due diligence on ideas that I had thought up in the previous couple weeks.
Right.
So the first 2 weeks was like really heavy, like just idea generation. So, where do you start there? I started with looking into high growth industries and industries with high profit margins. Those are kind of the two places I started. So I just really started reading research reports, like going online, Googling, consumer products, cannabis is super high growth, high growth beverages, protein bars, like a lot of these things that you can just Google around for 10 minutes and find, people writing research reports about, where they see products going, or what industries or sub-segments they see growing really quickly in the next 2, 3, 5, 7 years. So that was the first place I looked. And then I looked at high profit margins, because obviously, there's certain businesses where you have to have massive amounts of capital, because you're going to burn a huge amount of cash in order to get the company jump started before you can really monetize it. Right. So it's like, if you're starting a tech company, unless you have a way to monetize it really early, or I think with some, path to monetization, it's very easy. A lot of those require a huge amount of labor up front, a huge amount of coding. And so there are pros and cons to all different types of businesses, but two that I was looking at was high growth and high profit margin. And so to get to NOCA, I started reading articles on the hard seltzer market. And this was in summer of 2018. So to give you some perspective, hard spiked seltzer, the very first hard seltzer, was launched in 2013 by Dave Holmes and Nick Shields. I've actually met Dave a couple times. He's a nice guy, very smart. And they were bought by Anheuser-Busch in 2016. 2016 was when Mark Anthony Brands launched White Claw and Boston Beer launched Truly, the two 800-pound gorillas in the seltzer market nowadays. And so everybody and their cousin who was above 21 was drinking the hard seltzer.
Sometimes under.
And
right? I
said
sometimes under, let's be honest.
Yeah, literally. But the amazing thing was, and I thought this was really interesting, was hard seltzer was stealing the lunch money from basically every category of alcohol. So they were taking consumers from beer. They were taking consumers from wine. They were taking consumers from liquor. They were taking consumers from light beer, craft beer. I mean, hard cider, you name it. Everybody, because it was a better for you, light. You could drink a bunch of them and not feel like shit the next day. Are we allowed to swear in here?
Of course.
Okay. Cool. Just didn't know. You don't feel like shit the next day. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was reading articles on the growth and I thought it was cool. And then, I was 25 at that point and all of my friends were drinking the hard seltzers. Everybody. I mean, literally everybody. And to me, I don't know. It just never really it seemed like something was missing because, food and beverage is something you literally consume. So it's you want to enjoy what you're consuming. And I never drank seltzer water, like regular seltzer water, like growing up. And I never understood. I know people love it. Like, my godmother drinks it religiously, but I never really understood personally why people drank it. For me, it gives me heartburn. It upsets my stomach. Like you feel bloated, like you're burping. And there's like very little flavor. So it's like, why even bother? So what I always drank as a kid was just water with fruit steeped in it. So, whether it was strawberries or blueberries or, lemons or limes or, nectarines, whatever, or like an unsweetened iced tea or like a lemonade, something along those lines. And I realized to me, what was really refreshing about those drinks was the fact that like, it could be a hot summer day. And when I finished mowing the lawn or doing whatever, I could go and take like 3 big swigs of it and it would be super refreshing. Try to do that with a seltzer without your throat like burning a hole in it. Like it's so uncomfortable. Like you can't do it. And that's what the true refreshment of non-carbonated drinks, whether it's a Propel or a Gatorade or a vitamin water, that's what was really appealing to me. And so I called my friend Rich and I was like, dude, this sounds crazy. I'm like, but what if we made a non-carbonated alternative to the hard seltzers? I said, for all the people out there who like non-carbonated drinks when they're not drinking alcohol, they don't have any alternative when they're drinking alcohol. And to me, carbonation versus non-carbonation is a preference thing. Like when you go to a restaurant, you're offered either sparkling or still. When you walk down the grocery store aisle, 70-something% or whatever of the water there is non-carbonated. To me, that speaks to consumer preference. So, again, very long-winded way of kind of explaining it.
No, that's amazing. And that gives a lot of depth and insight. Just going back like one second, just give the listeners like an idea, something that you had punted on, something that you found that was like high growth, low profit or low growth, high profit that you were just like, this, it's not it. I mean, unless you still have something like in the works, you know what I mean? You don't want to have anyone steal those ideas.
I can give one. Yeah, no, I'm happy to give one. So like I was looking at a kind of like, it's hard to explain, so I'll give like the very high level description. I was looking at an app / like online platform that was essentially geared towards the younger generation of investors. So like with Robinhood, we've seen a lot of people, a lot of like, younger investors, whether it's like teenagers or younger adults who probably wouldn't have dabbled in the stock market previously or not wouldn't or couldn't have. A lot of them are investing in nowadays. And like, being a finance guy, I was having friends who had, again, nothing wrong with this, but zero knowledge of how a stock works or zero knowledge of how an equity works. We're investing in incredibly risky assets, like incredibly risky assets. And I was like, do you know what you're investing in? And they're like, oh, no. And I was like, okay, then why are you doing it? You're putting your money at risk. Anyways, anyone can do what they want with their money. But point being, we were going to put together an app or a platform to assist them essentially. Again, I think the idea is there. I think the ability to monetize it is incredibly difficult. I think we would have to put a huge amount of capital into developing a user base before we could even think about monetizing it. So that was something that, again, good idea, maybe better for somebody else who has the technical knowledge, but probably not for me. Cool.
And for all intents and purposes, sounds like you made the right decision, right? And
I hope so.
Good. And so what does a normal day look like? Like, what did you What'd you get into today? Today's a Thursday. Looks like you're still hanging out there, according to the background. So
yeah, I'm in the office. Our days, in this time of year are really centered around expansion and Q1 and setting up the spring and summer. So I spent time meeting with a strategic partner of ours to discuss, how we're going to activate the brand in our expansion markets. So we're expanding some pretty big states, some states in the Midwest, some states down south.
I mean, like distribution, right?
Yep. Correct. Yeah. So right now we're only distributed in New England, Philly, and New Jersey.
Got it.
And for the listeners who want to check out our product, I highly recommend it. You can go to drinknoca.com, or I would check out our Instagram or TikTok, at Drink NOCA. We actually have a pretty decent TikTok following. It shows a lot of like what we do kind of behind the scenes and stuff. But again, we're only distributed there, and you can find the product with our store locator, which is super helpful because you can just punch in your zip code and we'll tell you where it's sold near you. But if you're in states outside the Northeast, you'll have to wait until spring of 2022. So yeah, I spend time working on our expansion. I talk to our sales guys. We have 3 phenomenal sales that maintain our territories. I focus a lot on like our sales and execution strategy and like how we're actually like performing at retail. And I deal with our investors. So, obviously we raise capital to fund this business. I deal with our investors. And I also talked with our lawyers today about the licensing that we need to expand to new states. So my job is principally, the sales, the investor, legal, and, I work with Alex and Rich, my 2 business partners, pretty in line with like expansion strategy, product development. We're coming out with new products and kind of all that, overarching strategic stuff.
Nice. You guys have a tap room? I'm just curious.
We don't. That's actually something we've thought about. It would be very, very interesting for us to do that. I would not be surprised if we did that in the next 2 years.
Got it.
Not sure if it'll happen because logistics are, it is difficult. You're opening essentially a restaurant, right, and a tap room, and we have our product packaged, but I definitely think it would be interesting.
Nice. Awesome. So again, it's 6:17 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for everyone. You're still there. Like, what's the work-life balance like? Like, are you taking vacations? Are you sleeping?
I haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. Let me put it this way. I'm very honest about how I live my life. I'm very honest about, the realities of being an entrepreneur. I think there's a reason that a lot of people aren't entrepreneurs. I think it's a lifestyle that not many people can handle, candidly. And again, also keep in mind, everybody handles being an entrepreneur differently. My perspective on being an entrepreneur is I would much rather leave it all in the field. And, after, a few years, 3, 5, 10 years, whatever, if I end up failing, I can at least look back and say, shit, I gave it my all. I think Kobe Bryant actually some quote that I really liked. And like he was talking about how like, he's just he's going 24/7, or he was, rest in peace. He was going 24/7. And, it's like, I want to look back on my time, running this company and say, I gave everything I possibly had, not going to burn out obviously, but I don't take excessive time to myself. I have time on the weekends that I relax. Me and my roommate hang out. I'll go see my dad in New Hampshire. I'll hang out with friends. But Monday through Thursday, I'm working a lot. Friday, usually take the evening to hang out, watch some TV. Hopefully we'll go see the new Spider-Man movie soon.
And drink some NOCA. God damn it. Right?
Yeah. Oh, trust me, I have plenty at my house. But yeah, I mean, I would say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, probably working like 8 a.m. till like midnight or so. And then Thursdays, I was in a kickball league, which is fun. Not anymore because it's cold, but that right. would get me out. I mean, again, it's all kind of about like delegation of time, right? As long as you get the stuff done, that's all that really matters. The hard part about being an entrepreneur is there's always more to do. If you're in a traditional 9-to-5 job, you can always do more theoretically, but you don't necessarily feel the intrinsic like internal pressure to constantly be performing and growing. When you're an entrepreneur, you own what you're doing. You own every facet of what you're doing. So it's almost odd, but I talk to my business partners about this all the time, but when you're not working, you're thinking, what else should I be doing?
Yeah.
And being mindful, meditating is very important in terms of maintaining mental balance and ensuring that doesn't become a toxic part of your life. Good.
It's good to hear that. It sounds like there's a little bit of, mental stability and your, regeneration and all that stuff there, which is great. Everyone needs to take some time for themselves or again, to your point, you'll get burned out and you don't want that because you want to keep the train going. So where do you feel like you need the most help and B, like if you're in a position to do so, like you can delegate and be like, you know what, I trust you, you got this.
So we definitely need, I would say, the most help in, I would say, sales and marketing. Sales, our sales guys do an incredible job of maintaining the accounts, but it's only 3 guys in 7 states. So obviously, like, you can always use more salespeople. And I would say also marketing, in the sense that marketing is a constantly evolving beast. It was just a few years ago that influencers was, or a few years ago is relative, but it wasn't too long ago that influencers was like new on the scene, and that was the way. It still is a lot of the way to market, and it was super effective because you were hearing a quote unquote testimony from somebody that you gave credibility to. Nowadays, at least in my opinion, we use influencers, but we use it in a different way, and I think that, like, when I see, I don't know, pick your poison, like A-Rod or Shaq or, or even like somebody who's on The Bachelor or somebody who's on, Bravo TV. When I see them post with a product, I think a lot of people do what I do, which is just scroll past, because it's just a paid ad and it's not right. Doesn't have the credibility that we used to assign it, yep. Right? Like, when I see nowadays, what I think is effective is getting people who aren't influencers to post, because that's when you have somebody who says, okay, I'm going to put my social neck on the line, per se. They're putting themselves up for judgment by their peers on social media by posting a product that they stand behind. So if somebody's willing to do that, then chances are that's a pretty damn good product.
Yeah. Genuine, organic. I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
So you obviously consider yourself a leader, right?
I'd like to think so. I've always I feel like I've always just gotten stuck in the position, or
I mean, it happens.
Or I just get like kind of thrown into it. But I mean, I think that people become leaders by doing.
Yeah, and some of the things about leadership are, you die on that hill, right? So
yeah,
what about leadership, sort of erodes at you, where it's like, are you open to criticism? Can people say, here's some constructive feedback that, that you take, well, or don't take well? Like, what does that look like in terms of like personality, strengths and weaknesses? What do you feel?
Honestly, it's a really good question. What I would say to that is, I would say there are definitely people in this world who think I'm not good at that. But what I would say to any of them is, I am always open to feedback and constructive criticism. My mentality on personal and professional life is to constantly be evolving. I think I think being stagnant is the kiss of death in many ways. So I'm always looking to improve myself. When I have issues with feedback is when it's grounded in either misinformation, lack of information, or some sort of emotional issue.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So when I make any recommendation, or when I say, hey, I think this, I think that, my thoughts are not based, like, I always do my research. I always think through things. I always have a logical reasoning as to why I recommend something. I think that that's not necessarily true. I mean, again, I say always, you can't really speak in absolutes. I'm sure there are times I haven't, but I would say 99.9% of the time, if you ask me why do I think something, I can give you a logical reason. I can say because of X, Y, and Z, and I think that's the best way to make recommendations or make decisions. what I can say for other people, at least based on, the interactions I have or have had, is that there's a lot of people out there who, make emotion-based decisions. They say, I'm going to let my emotions override my logic and make this decision based on ego, or make this decision based on pride, make this recommendation based on X, X, and X, and X, and X, whatever, because, they aren't able to separate the logical side of things and the, emotional side of things. And that's the only time I have issue. I am, I am known to have a temper. Something that meditation and mindfulness has helped with a lot, but I would say that I am constantly working on ways to improve how I perceive things, how I look at things, how I absorb things, how I react to things. When you run a business, you talk to a lot of people, or when you're involved with a startup, you talk to a lot of people. Every person is going to be different, and chances are there's going to be bad news thrown at you every day. Your ability to react to that bad news in a proper manner and in a manner that is best for your business it's not a desire, it's a requirement.
Love it that you're data driven, because it's important. I mean, you're a finance guy. You're dealing in numbers and math, and those decisions are really, really important than dealing strategically on hunches. And sometimes that happens.
No, for sure. And one thing that I would recommend for your listeners, a book that explains kind of my perspective on this is called Blink. If you haven't read it, it's by Malcolm Gladwell. It talks about how we absorb information, a lot of information, and then our brains make split-second decisions. So I think like when you're an entrepreneur, you're doing lots and lots and lots and lots of things. You're learning lots and lots and lots of things. And what you start to do is you start to make snap decisions based off of all that experience. And I think that and trusting your gut and trusting those things is also part of, I think, again, like when I make decisions, it's based off of logic, or it's based off of things I've learned throughout all of those experiences. But just a recommendation.
I like Malcolm Gladwell. I haven't read that, but I read another one of his books, and he does have an excellent.
Would you read Outliers?
I read Outliers. Yep. And he has an excellent podcast.
Revisionist history.
We don't discriminate here. We like to support other podcasts that are good. So
hey, you gotta game recognize game.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, he's the best of the best.
So you talked about knowing and talking to a lot of people. So how often and what are you doing as far as networking? Is it like conferences? Is it festivals? Like what does that look like in terms of kind of spreading the word for NOCA, and then brand recognition for yourself and for your business partners?
Yeah, we'll do like events and festivals and all sorts of things, like to promote the brand, like to network the brand in that sense. Like, we haven't gone to any trade shows yet. Candidly, we heard mixed reviews on how people thought they were going to be this year due to COVID. And obviously last year there was none. So we haven't done any festivals, and we haven't done any trade shows or conferences like that. The way that I network, or the way that, I think me and my business partners network like pretty consistently, is just through the industry. So one piece of advice that I always give that I think a lot of people don't take, and this was actually given to me years ago, is every conversation you have with somebody who's like, value add to you or knowledgeable in some form or fashion, is to ask, hey, is there anybody else in your circle who you'd recommend I speak with, or you think I'd benefit from speaking with? I can tell you right now, when I have people reach out to me, 99.999% of people do not do this, and it is the most fatal mistake of networking. Every single person you talk to, you should at the end of their conversation say, hey, is there anybody in your network you think I'd benefit from? The amount of people you will meet through doing that is staggering. A lot of the people I've met over the years, whether it's in finance or beverages, or you name it, entrepreneurs, whoever, has been not the first person I reach out to, but a friend of the person that I reached out to, or the friend of the connection. And if you leave a good impression with somebody, they're usually going to say yes. And if you leave a bad impression with somebody, they're still going to say yes and then just not connect you. So you might as well just friggin' ask.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So, take heed, listeners. Don't be afraid to make that extra push to, open up and broaden your network, because people are more than happy and willing to do it. So excellent piece of feedback and advice.
Fortune favors the bold. You got to ask.
So I'm going to ask a couple of questions about how 2021 went for you. Just give me an idea of like the highest high of this year and the lowest low, and, kind of how those came about and what you're looking towards for 2022.
The highest high of 2021, man. I gotta say, this is a little bit unique, I would say, because let me put it this way. I'll also say to everybody out there who's listening, being an entrepreneur, you will experience the highest highs and the lowest lows you've ever experienced. That's part of what makes it a unique experience. I would say the highest high for 2021 was probably our Halloween boat party. So if you should check it out, go on our either our Instagram or TikTok. We were gonna have a Halloween party at our office in South Boston. And we essentially just put on like Eventbrite, and we're like, hey, let's get a ton of people together. A ton meaning like a handful, but let's get a decent amount of people together. Let's have a friggin' blast. We'll drink some NOCAs. We'll play music. We'll get dressed up. We'll do all the fun shit. And it sold out like so quick. And so we actually had a connection with a guy who owned this like mega yacht in Boston Harbor. And it's like one of those mega yachts where you buy tickets, and it's not like a personal yacht. It's like a mega yacht where you buy tickets and has two bars. It goes out into the harbor on cruises every day, every night. And so we were like, hey, can we throw our Halloween party on your yacht? And he was like, absolutely. And so we had sold out the event already. So we had, I think, 350 tickets. 350 people is the capacity of this yacht. And, between myself, my two business partners, and, an influencer who I'll mention in a minute, we saved like, I don't know, whatever, 10, 15, 20 tickets for ourselves. So we had to sell 330, 325 tickets. We sold it out in like 4 or 5 days. It went like crazy. Nice. And so there's videos on our TikTok. It was pretty wild. It was honestly insane. We partied all night, and it was on a yacht in Boston Harbor with DJs and Two Turn Tony. I don't know if you know him. He has like 13 something million followers on TikTok. He's like a mega influencer at this point. He flew out for it, and we just partied with him and his crew and 320 people all night.
That's dope.
And it was
awesome.
It was wild.
Nice.
Yeah. And so that was probably the highest high. The lowest low
was probably the next day, the hangover, something like that.
Well, legal disclosure, this is not scientifically proven, but I actually I never get hangovers from NOCA. It's insane. Me and my business partners talk about this. I don't know why it is, but none of us get hangovers, and our friends don't either. The lowest low, I can't disclose what it was, but a potential business partnership fell through. It was a big bummer. That was really, really tough. But again, that's part of being an entrepreneur, man, is just grinding. I saw a strength coach from some college football team, and he said winning is sprinting and not knowing how long you have to run. And I was like, shit, dude. I'm like, that is facts. I'm like, the amount of times we've hit brick walls, the amount of times we've heard no, the amount of times we've run into shit and just gotten our teeth kicked in is uncountable. But we get up every day and we continue sprinting. And that's being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. And that's why you're here. That's why you're doing the damn thing, right?
100%.
Let me get some quick personal favorites out of you before we wrap up. What's your favorite small business right now?
My favorite
small business.
My favorite small business.
I mean, obviously, besides your own.
That is a great question. I've never really thought about that.
Anywhere you visit.
Honestly, I know this sounds like this is really general, but I love local coffee shops. Mm-hmm. There's one in Newmarket, New Hampshire, where my dad lives, called Crack Skulls. Oh my God, it's unbelievable. It's so great. That's probably up there. Let me think about that. Okay. I would have to say that one. There's so many, right? It's there's a family friend who started a charcuterie business that's super cool. I met a nice young lady who started like a tea, like it's like those teas and those proteins, like a drink bar. I love all that stuff.
Shout out to entrepreneurs.
For sure.
What's a product that you recommend that you've been using lately?
Oh, great question. Let me actually think about that for a second. Oh, you know what? 100% this. My brother's girlfriend got me this for Christmas. This is a great stocking stuffer. It's a pop socket, but it has Burt's Bees chapstick in it.
Oh, wow.
So you can like, I don't know if you can hear this, but like,
yeah,
you can like pop it open and close. And I use chapstick religiously. And that is so
clutch. Love it. Awesome.
Also, Yetis are so great. I mean,
yeah, we have like 3
phenomenal product.
Yeah, it's an amazing product. Love it. Yeah,
dude, it's the best. I have, my dad stole my biggest Yeti, but I have like 2 of them, and oh my god, I don't know what I would do without it.
Great. And what's your favorite app right now?
Yeah. App, like phone app. All right, so here's another. I'm going to get entrepreneurial again. There's an app called Flipboard, Flipboard. I would so recommend that to anybody who's either interested in being an entrepreneur or candidly just wants to learn some shit. It's so great because what you can do is it's essentially like news and articles that you can set by category. So some of my categories are entrepreneurship, cannabis, beverages, finance, startups. You could do like crypto. You could do sports. Golf is one of mine. You name it. Christmas. I don't know. You freaking pick something, and you set it, and you every time you go on, it has new articles or new like news stories based off of that. So like I'll go on and I'll just read for like 20 minutes about, all sorts of new cannabis businesses or new articles on cannabis, or I'll read about like, I'll read about like golf and stuff like that. And it's like, it's nice to go on and you can like flip article to article. And one of my mentors actually, we'll send each other Flipboard articles because it's like, when you're going on, like, I mean, if I open the Wall Street Journal right now, it'd probably, it would take me, I don't know, 15 minutes to actually find an article that interested me. But with this, I go on and I can find anything immediately. I massively recommend that to people all the time.
Nice. Everyone out there, check out Flipboard. Check out the Flipboard app.
It's huge. It literally, and the greatest part about it is like, so quick side tangent, but like, a huge thing that people could do to help themselves as entrepreneurs and also just like personally develop is like take time off of social media that you could spend elsewhere. So like, don't get me wrong. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Snapchat, Facebook, whatever. And I go on there plenty, but like, even if you just decrease the amount of times you go on per day by 1, think about that. That could be like 10 minutes a day. That's 70 minutes a week. That's, 3,500 minutes a year. I mean, what's that? That's 50 hours. Is that right? No, I don't know, something like that. But point being, like, that's a huge amount of time that you could get back. And but the problem is cycles are really hard to break because you need to replace that thing with something else. So what I started doing and what I recommend to people to do is, just once or twice a day when you're going to go on Instagram, go on Flipboard instead. And just read something, like read an art, like all sorts of stuff comes up on entrepreneurs. Like they, Inc. articles, Forbes articles are usually locked because you have to have subscriptions to the website. You can read this stuff and it goes through like the top 10 things that Warren Buffett recommends, 3 things Elon Musk said, help him focus, like the key to being more efficient when you're working late, all sorts of shit. It's really, really, really a great resource.
Great. I'm glad that you recommended it. That is the end of the lightning round, I guess. I just made that up, so Joel can steal it if he wants to.
I know that's a good name.
Nice little segment. You're welcome, Joel. You can have it. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you a couple more things. Just to kind of wind down and set the table for 2022 and beyond. What is the exit strategy? Like, what's the NOCA is crushing it. What's the North Star? Like, what is that looking like? Like big picture.
There's no real way to know. I would say, obviously I love growing this business. We have an absolute blast with it. It's fun. Like, I work my ass off every day, but I enjoy it. If there was an acquisition potential, obviously we would entertain that. I do think an acquisition eventually would be very interesting, in the sense that, we could work for the next 40 years, and this brand theoretically may never grow across the whole country or into all the stores that we want it to be. If there was ever a time and a place where a large company said, "Hey, I'd like to buy this business," aside from the payday, it's, you're given the opportunity to grow a brand that you created across to a level that would take you decades. And I think that in itself is very rewarding.
Great. You've given a lot of good nuggets to the listeners. Any final piece of advice for entrepreneurs or anyone struggling at work, anyone looking to get out or just looking for something else?
Yeah, I would say two things. So the first thing I would say is always be focused on progress. The problem that a lot of people have is they're constantly counting the money in other people's wallets, and they're constantly measuring their success against others. The key to happiness is not hitting a benchmark. It's progress. Whether you're overweight and you want to lose weight, you're not going to be happy the moment you have washboard abs. You're going to be happy after, a week when you've successfully not eaten fried chicken or chocolate, and you've worked out 3 times, because that's progress. The progress is what makes you feel happy. So whether it's somebody who wants to be an entrepreneur and at the time can only do stuff after hours, or it's an entrepreneur that feels stagnant and stuck, the key to feeling better about this stuff and to actually, having that intrinsic happiness is just progress. And progress takes every shape and size. And that's why the worst thing you can do is compare to other people, because you're always going to find people that are worse than you. You're always going to find people that are better than you. So I would focus on your own personal progress and use that to build momentum. And that's the next thing I would mention is building momentum. Building momentum is incredibly important. And, Joe Rogan talks about it a bit, but like, some entrepreneurs don't even like taking, weekends off because they lose momentum. And if you can build momentum, maintaining that momentum it will do wonders. You will accomplish so much. You'll be so happy with yourself, and you'll feel fulfilled. And I know I've been ranting a lot, so I'll wrap it up there. It's funny, little plug really quickly, but I've been asked to go back to UNH and talk to students and just kind of give perspective, because I'm 28. I quit my very lucrative job in finance to do this, and I'm happy as I could possibly be and working with 2 of my best friends. And I also I'm very blunt with my perspective, and I've had experiences getting a job that somebody University of New Hampshire is an absolutely phenomenal school, but investment banks typically only recruit from very top tier,
Wharton's and the
Ivy Leagues or top tier business schools. And so I was very fortunate to get a job that, traditionally they didn't recruit at UNH. And, so I'm asked a lot for perspective on, students, recent graduates, professions, resumes, starting businesses, moving jobs, getting a new job, interviewing, all sorts of shit. And so I was convinced to make a TikTok where I would answer all of the common questions I get, because I get a lot of the same questions pretty frequently. And if, Joel, if you guys are interested in giving it a look, it's at Galen Hand, GalenHand. And if there's more questions that, that people want answers to or want perspective on, I'm always happy to give it. And let me put it this way. You're going to get a lot of bullshit from people out there, and people are going to sugarcoat things and kind of tell you what you want to hear. That's not how I play.
Perfect. I think that was a nice segue into the last piece is, anything that you want to plug. Obviously you want to plug NOCA. If you want to plug your, anything that your business partners, their TikToks or, Instagrams or whatever, please do it here. Where can everyone find you on the web? Where, if you want to give out the address to, NOCA's headquarters and all that stuff, now's the time. Anything that you want to push.
Yeah, for sure. So NOCA's headquarters is in South Boston. If people want the exact address, we do a lot of events here. We throw in the spring and summer, we do, we call Saturdays, which is Saturday afternoons, and we do day drinks out in the, I would reach out to us on Instagram or TikTok at Drink NOCA. I can look up I only know one of my business partners' TikToks. It's hold on. Mine is at Galen Hand, Galen.
It's all good. What are names? I'm sure people can find them on LinkedIn.
Alex Febonio, AlexFebonio, and Rich Roy, Richroy. And my Instagram, for anybody who's interested, is Galen, Galen.hand, HAN. I would just say, honestly, we're three young entrepreneurs. If you live in New England or Philly or Jersey, give our product a try. Shoot us a DM, mention that you heard this on the podcast. Maybe we'll mail you a hat or, a koozie or something like that, or a t-shirt. And, just appreciate you supporting, three young entrepreneurs that are trying to do something a bit different.
Excellent. Support Alex, Rich, Galen. I think I got that right?
That's correct.
At Drink NOCA. I'm really, really excited to, get down there in person and support and meet you guys in person. I'm a Bostonian, grew up there. I'm right outside the city in Waltham, moved there with my wife.
Nice.
But, I'm doing a lot of stuff, events wise. I have a big event that happens in Somerville over the course of the summer called Summerfest, but there's going to be some room for expansion as well. And the attendees and patrons are young drinkers, and there might be a little bit of little bit of overlap in terms of some synergy at play. So kudos to you guys, props, and it was great having you on the Moonlighters Club. For Galen, for NOCA, for Joel, my name is Sur5Ill. It was a pleasure to host, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thank you, man. Take it easy.